Hello,
Hi, Tyrel. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I watched your movie, The Sound of Southside, yesterday, and wow. Well, so let me back it up a little bit. So you
hmm
also grew up in Queens. I
Yes,
am
yes.
in Bayside area,
Okay.
and I believe you're in like Jamaica States area.
Yeah, originally I'm from Rosedale, which is in Southeast Queens, and now I'm living in the Jamaica area.
Nice. Okay,
hmm
okay. So we're sort of from like around the same area.
Right, right.
Um, so okay, you wrote The Sound of Southside as a book,
hmm
and then
Yeah.
you created a movie from it.
hmm
And first off, when did you have this idea?
Um, I think the first spark for the idea came about in 20, well, actually farther back, 2018. I was working on my first film, April Again, and I was working with jazz musicians to compose the music for the film. And just through watching their process, I became very inspired. And I just remember being in that room and wanting my next film to feel like that room. So the idea was initially going to be a film, but then when COVID happened, you know how that goes. Everything shut down. So, in an effort to stay creative, I decided to turn it into a book. So I started writing the novel, and then when things started opening back up, I was like, well, it was going to be a film idea initially, so I want to keep it and try to adapt it into a film. So I ended up doing both.
Wow, which is a big, undertaking. And I didn't read the book yet, but the movie is just, it felt very, like, very realistic, but also very, I'm trying to think of the word, as if I was living it and as
Yeah.
if it was just happening outside of my house. And maybe that's because also I was able to see like where you were filming. I
Mhm.
know, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've been to the DMV right there, not the DMV,
Right.
but whatever. Like I've
hmm
been to those landmarks in your movie. So for me it felt, not just like I was watching something that I couldn't connect to,
hmm
but it was very natural and very real. And
Thank
even
you.
from the
Thank you.
first second when you put on the movie, and I
Yeah.
was watching it on my computer, I put
Yeah.
it on, and the jazz was all around me. Like
Yeah.
it was surround sound. And I
hmm
even paused at 1 second and was like, is it actually like, am I hearing things?
Yeah.
But it was just surround sound and it was
hmm
beautiful. I
Thank
mean,
you. Thank you.
I don't know how you filmed it all right
Yeah.
here, but
hmm
it was beautiful.
Thank you. So the goal is definitely authenticity. So
That's what I want. That's the word.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a challenge because I wanted to find actors who could actually play the instruments rather than just fake it. One because I didn't have the budget to actually like work with somebody like a musician specialist who can make the actors look like they're playing the instruments. So I actually needed the musicians. And also I just wanted it to have that real feel. So I worked with real jazz musicians. I really prioritized the score. So I want to give thanks to my bro Stephen Fowler who composed the score, and also Kofi Hunter who was the music supervisor. They helped build that world, um, and I just gave them a prompt because they're both from Queens. So I gave them a prompt of like create what you think the community feels like to you, and they just took that and ran with it. And as far as the visuals and all of that, I definitely wanted to establish like a authentic sense of place. So I really prioritized shooting it on location in Jamaica, Queens, on Jamaica Avenue, and all of these places, even though it was difficult to shoot there because of all the commotion and all of that stuff, and we didn't have permits. So that was difficult to execute, but I wanted to evoke that feeling of what you're saying, like you recognize these places, and I knew that that would go a long way. So I'm hoping that people from Queens can identify that and like that, but I'm hoping universally people can also identify in some of the themes and find common ground there as well.
Yeah. And I was watching it and I noticed there were a few things that were very relatable. So you have this main character Malachi who you're already rooting for from the second you see him within the first frame of the movie.
Hmm.
And you think about innocence, dreams, generational differences,
Hmm.
um, politics, dirty
Yeah.
politics,
Yeah.
um, and, like, those are I feel like the 4 main things that I think of when I think of your movie,
Right.
but it's also very organic. Everything that happens in the movie is organic, and when I was watching it, I was rooting, and then there were times that I was, like, hiding my face, and and you just I'm not gonna spoil anything,
Yeah.
but you feel very fulfilled by the end, but
Yeah.
the whole movie, it's unpredictable,
Yeah.
which is
Thank you.
great,
Thank
but
you.
also very nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what I was going for, to kind of build tension throughout the movie and then have a satisfying ending. Because my last film, April Again, I kinda left it open-ended, and, the protagonist didn't necessarily win at the end, which I was going for, but I realized that, it doesn't have that rewatchability, like, because it kinda takes a toll on you by when you get to the end of the movie, you don't feel that sense of completion, so with this one, I kinda wanted to wrap it up like it's a fairy tale so you can come back and watch it, and, even though it is a roller coaster throughout the film, I wanted to have that closure so you feel good about, where the story ended up. So that was very intentional.
Yeah, I wrote that the ending was very fulfilling. Like,
Yeah.
everything was wrapped up, and I mean, it's all as the word that you said, authentic, but very
Mhm.
realistic. Like,
Right.
you and you can tell me if I've spoiled anything, but you just have
Mm.
this main character who gets home from being in college for 4 years, which not everyone gets a chance to do,
Right, yeah.
and, you know, the second he gets home, it's like, "Well, now what are you doing?" Like,
Right.
society's like, "Okay, great, now you showed us
Mhm.
all that you're the big shot here.
Right.
What are you gonna do?"
Mhm.
And this poor guy has a dream, and it's like, "Okay, what roads are you gonna take to achieve it?"
Right,
And
exactly.
it's very realistic in the sense that, like, we get out of college and we have a
Mhm.
dream, and it's you either give up that dream sometimes or you
Yeah.
don't, but then if you don't,
Mhm.
how are you gonna achieve it? And it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very beautiful, and the characters, I felt like were very like, you went into detail without going into detail, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
there was no necessarily, like, a background story that you shared immediately, but you
Right.
understood it.
Yeah, and that was kind of out of necessity because the first script that I had, it had everybody's backstory and all that stuff, but then when I break down the budget and I realized, like, okay, like, this would require this many shoot days, and, like, I would need a budget of this much to really get into everyone's backstory. So, I kind of just condense it at the best that I can and try to show everyone's intentions through, the actions that they do and the scenes that we see. Um, I would say if anyone is interested in reading the book and watching the film, it would definitely be beneficial because I go farther into everyone's backstory in the book, and, the book is a lot different than the film because I didn't have a budget to worry about, obviously, when I was writing the book, so I was able to make the world a lot bigger, through the book, but I'm happy that I did both, but, when it comes to the film, it's a lot more condensed as far as everyone's backstory.
Yeah, and I've read that, one of the biggest differences between the written form and the movie is that in the book, some of the characters, it's their point of view for some of the chapters. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, so, since I'm coming from a filmmaking background and this was the first book that I had written, I I was struggling with, like, I started off writing in Malachi's perspective, but then I wanted to write everyone else's story as well. So the way I guess remedied that was Malachi has a couple of chapters, and then we branch off and go to the people who work at the bar. We see the story from their perspective, and we go to Afeni's perspective, and so on. So it kind of reflected film in that way, where you have this hero's journey, but you also have other people. So you want to flesh out their story as well. So the book kind of reflects that because we go to their perspective for chapters.
Yeah, I kind of love that as like maybe I should have read that before I watched the actual movie, just because you get it from the. I mean, the acting was really spot on. I mean, just from the facial expressions and like the minute stories that you put in there of those background characters, you get
Yeah,
it. Like you understand what's happening. But I feel like, as you're saying, like the book is telling you all the nitty gritty details that
right, right.
are written in the movie just very differently, right? Like we still get a sense of who these people are and what they want out of life. And
Mhm.
it's just I don't I always am in awe of people who can write stories and create movies because you're telling a whole world that doesn't necessarily exist, right? Like the
Mhm.
story we know has happened, right? I'm not going to
Right.
give it away, but like we know certain people have experienced this kind of story. But
Mhm.
you had to create it all.
Yeah.
I don't know your experience, but you know, it's amazing how your brain can create this.
Yeah, I think for me, even if I'm writing a fictional story, I like to start from like a foundation of like truth and things that I relate to and things that I care about. And then like everything else sprouts out from that. So, for example, the whole graduating from college thing that we spoke about, that part kind of comes from my own experience of like once you get home, what do you do? How do you pursue your dreams, but also like how do you support yourself? And so stuff like that came from my own experience. And then through the vehicle of jazz music, I started to like get into the fictional world. So that's kinda how I started it.
Mm. And what was your process like for creating these characters? Because they are very unique in their own sense. But they are so beautiful and rich. And how did you come up with all the characters? Because there are a
Mhm,
bunch of them. There's what, like
mhm.
10 characters that are kind of, I mean, Malachi is your main character, but the other ones I
Mhm.
feel like are still very big in the story.
Right. I like to create like mashups of various people that I know and just bring different parts of them into each character. For example, Afeni is very much based on my wife in a lot of ways. And also my wife played Afeni in the film. She's an actor. Oh, I just want to plug my wife. So she has a Hulu show coming out this week. It's called Saint X and it's premiering on Hulu, and I'm very proud of her. But yeah, she was in the film, and she's Jamaican, and through conversations with her, I started like putting together the pieces of Afeni, but also keeping it fictional as well. And through Malachi, I think so. I work full time at a place called Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning. It's a nonprofit art center in Queens, and we do something called Thursday Night Jazz, and we're constantly working with different jazz musicians, and I'm constantly hands on, like working with them, and like through that I start to pick up like the way they talk and the different things that they want out of life. So more so in the book, Malachi talks a very specific way, like his slang and all of that stuff, and I pull that directly from the interactions that I have through the jazz musicians I work with at my job. So yeah, I think for every character I can probably name a couple of people who I pulled like different traits from them out of.
Wow. Your wife is amazing.
Thank you.
Her acting was
Yeah.
amazing, her accent amazing, she's
Yeah.
beautiful, oh my gosh. Okay, her new
Mhm.
show's on Hulu, okay, I'm gonna put
Mhm.
that in the show notes, that's amazing. And I love that that's something that you guys got to do together, because I'm
Yeah.
sure most couples don't get to do that, and to
Mm.
have her included in something so big and beautiful is
Yeah.
probably a really special, unique experience for you too.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I first started like making little amateur documentaries while I was in college, but as far as like really trying to tell narrative stories, like that was through meeting her, and like we were best friends before we got together. And it just started like I knew she was an actor and I was a filmmaker, so it just made sense for us to start like making little short form films. And by the time we get to like feature films, like we just have that chemistry where, we're able to just speak in, just we understand each other without saying words sometimes. So I'm really appreciative to have her as a muse, and she brings so much to the project as well, not just through acting, but when I'm coming up with a story, like I'm bouncing ideas off with her, and like, especially with the Jamaican stuff, like she's able to tell me what's authentic, what's not. So she's great.
Yeah. And that storyline of Afeni is also very relatable and very, everything in the story is very up with the times here and corrupt politics, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we may not necessarily see on the front all the time, but we know. We know that it's happening, and sometimes it is very aware and we see it in
Hmm.
society, and sometimes
Right.
we don't.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, for the politics part, I'm not very political, but I do notice like working on Jamaica Avenue every day, it's like the community is changing a lot in terms of gentrification, but it's also still very like dangerous. Like there's still pockets of it that's just like shady or whatever. So it's like we're putting all this money into the community and like bringing Shake Shack and Cold Stone Creamery and all of this stuff, but like there's still things that need to be cleaned up. So that was my um observation of just being on Jamaica Avenue every day, and I don't know who's behind it, so I kind of condensed everything into this one character, council member Jackson. But yeah, that was kind of my observation. Like, this is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, again, I think that the whole movie is very authentic and realistic, and I'm curious what you want people's biggest takeaway to be.
Hmm. Well, on a music level, I would like people's takeaway to be that jazz is not dead. It's still living on, and it's being led by the youth in a way that a lot of people don't know unless you're really immersed in that culture. So the fact that I was able to like through my job and everything kind of have a front row seat and see like these young jazz musicians really pushing the envelope, that inspired me to like share that story with the masses. So jazz isn't dead, for one, on a music level. um I want people to know like what the current state of Queens, and specifically Jamaica Queens, is like, and that it is a melting pot. So you have immigrants and things like that, um, who all have their own stories. And hmm, I think I'm trying to think of one more thing. But mostly, I just want to show that Black music and Black culture is living on, and yeah, I hope people get a look at what Queens is like in this day and age.
Yeah. I think that's amazing, and I do think that everything that you want people to take away from is there. So
Yeah,
great job there. um
thank you.
and I'm curious, what was your biggest obstacle through this journey of writing and producing and editing? Because you produced it, you edited it, you wrote it,
Yeah,
and you directed it.
yeah.
So that's a lot of things.
Yeah, I think on every like different level that you named, it comes with its own obstacles. So writing was probably the easiest thing because there's less pressure. It's just me and the script. And, if it doesn't end up becoming a film, I'm the only one who has to know that. But once I start involving other people, there's a lot of pressure. First, it comes from raising enough money. So this was my first time, like all my other films were self-funded. Like I'm just paying out of my bank account to make this film. But this is the first time where I was trying to get a bunch of grants and fellowships and all of that stuff to fund the film. So while I'm doing that, I'm also like casting the film and all of that. So it's like you're making promises that the film's gonna happen, but you're also hoping that the funding comes through. So that was a lot of pressure, and I had to rewrite the script a bunch of times because I started thinking I was gonna have this budget level, but a lot of grants that I didn't get made me like condense the script more. So that was a challenge. As far as actually shooting the film, you're dealing with the elements for one. So like when we're outside, if it rains that day, you have to pivot. If we're shooting right on Jamaica Avenue, so the pedestrians jumping in your shot and all of that stuff, you deal with the police telling you move along. You got to deal with that as well. And then when it comes to editing, um, that that was a difficult process for me because, I'm not like a natural like, editing is not really my craft, but it's something that I picked up out of necessity because I didn't have the budget to pay any editors, so I started editing my own work. So I worked really slow with that, and, I had to raise more money for that as well for the post-production side. So, yeah, it's every stage there's different obstacles, but I really cared about this story, so I wanted to keep pushing through all of them.
Yeah. Were there any moments that felt like the dream was impossible?
Um, yeah, there were a few moments, mostly in pre-production. Once we got rolling, it was like we're gonna finish this. It might not be good, but we'll figure it. We'll get to the finish line. But there was a point when we were casting the film. That's another thing is like the actors, for example. It seems to be inevitable. Other filmmakers go through it as well, but like you'll start with one cast, and by the time the film starts, like so many actors like keep dropping out, and you have to keep pivoting and like finding other people to fill their spots. But each time you have less and less time to really like bring that actor into the world. So there was a point when like the lead actor, we had a different Malachi at one point, but he ended up dropping out. So I was like scrambling to find a Malachi, and at that point I was like, all right, I think I might just scrap it because if we don't have a lead, we don't have a film, and it's hard to find a lead who can also play saxophone. So I was really happy to find James Ross because he had the perfect blend of experience. He's a trained actor. He went to NYU and all of that, but he's also been playing saxophone his whole life. So he really saved the film in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And his character, I feel like his acting is very natural too. Like it just felt like
Mhm.
these were people that I would see on the
Yeah,
streets of Queens and like that I would interact with, and they weren't just actors. Like they were
right.
real people, which was a really nice cool experience. And I wonder also if you, because I personally have imposter syndrome all the
Mhm.
time. Like even before an interview, I'm like, oh my god, what am I? Who do I think I am?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
did you ever experience that?
Yes, especially working with actors who have a lot more experience than I do. Like, there's this guy, Ron Bryce, the guy who played Martin, who worked at the bar. Like, I've been watching his films since like the '90s. He's in some of my favorite films. So just the fact that he agreed to be a part of the film, and like day one of the film, I was working with him and a bunch of other people. We shot all the bar scenes on that day, and I felt really nervous to just like address everyone and like you said, it was like, who do I think I am to try to like put this project together? And that's heightened when you're working with people who have experience and been in the industry. So yeah, this is definitely a thing.
Yeah. And I always love hearing about how like directors approach the cast, and obviously you had your script. Was it a very open like conversational experience, or was it kind of like I have the script here, we're going to pretty much follow it, and like were there any rewrites that had to be done as you went along cuz something just didn't feel like it was meshing with the characters that you had?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of filmmakers say like the film is written three times. Like it's written when you actually write it, then it's written again when you direct it, and it's written a third time when you edit it. So there was a lot of changes throughout. First off, I like to listen to the suggestions of the cast. Like if something's not working, I won't fight them on it because they're the ones who have to say it. So I encourage improvisation a lot. So there's a lot of like great lines where I'm like, "Ooh, I didn't even write that." So that's one thing is just listening to the cast and changing accordingly. But then when you get to the editing process, you realize that like certain scenes like really just don't work. And as filmmakers, we try to hold on to them sometimes because it's like every part of the film is like your baby and you don't want to let it go. But if it disrupts the rhythm, you have to let it go. Like there was a whole scene where Malachi is applying for jobs and stuff like that. And I created this like really quirky montage of like potential employers talking directly to the camera, like delivering a rejection letter. And it was great, but it just didn't fit the tone of the film. It was just too quirky, and I was like, this is just too comedic. So I took that out. Um, Also, another part that I took out is half of the like a good percentage of the film was going to be animation. So like for example, a musician would be playing an instrument and I would just shift to animation for a couple seconds and then shift out of it. Um, so I spent a lot of money getting that done, but I ended up taking that out as well. Um, Hopefully like I'll probably put it out like through like content and stuff like that. But it was just another thing that I felt didn't fit the tone of the film.
Yeah. And I'm trying to picture those as you said, quirky moments in it, and it
Mhm.
does change the tone quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Mhm.
Um, but also like really creative, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a
Mhm.
really creative point of view and you still have it. So like you still can use it for other things and as you said, other
Right.
content to promote the movie and things. But
Right.
I love yeah, I love the flow of the movie. Everything felt very natural. And I kinda like that there was no distinct timeline. Like,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily know, "Okay, it's been a week, it's been this
Yeah.
amount of
Mhm.
time." It was a very natural flowing, which is kind of also how we feel in life, like, the days go
Right.
by, and my other biggest takeaway was, like, we don't really know what someone's going through,
Yeah.
unless we ask them, and even then we might not know, but there's some
Right.
big twist in the movie, like several of them, where you just don't
Mhm.
actually know what these characters are going through until you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's something I was definitely trying to drive home is like in for the first couple of scenes, you can judge the characters, but then as the story kind of unpacks itself, you'll realize why people make the decisions they do. And I think in a lot of ways that that reflects life. And that's another thing that is further explored in the book, where you really understand the characters' choices more. Um, just through their circumstances and the cards that they were dealt. And, how they play them is, you know, it's I don't know the word, but we see how they play them, but we don't really see the cards they were dealt in a lot of ways.
Right, and that's life, like, we
Yeah.
walk around and, we try not to judge the people around us, but we don't know what anyone is going through, and,
Yeah.
we have to be kind to ourselves and kind to other people because sometimes some of the choices that they make are the only options that they have at the time, and
Exactly.
that's unfortunate and scary, but that's the life we live, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm. For sure.
Wow. Well, the movie it debuts May 13th, right?
Mhm.
And it's debuting in Queens?
Yes. So I am doing a premiere event on May 13th at Jamaica Performing Arts Center. That's free for all. It's also going to serve as a book signing for me. So it's going to be two part. I'm going to be signing books, and then we're going to screen the film as well. But as far as it being out for the world, that's gonna wait. That's gonna have to wait a while because after we premiere it in Queens, we're gonna go on the film festival circuit. So I've submitted to a bunch of festivals, and the hopes are for the film to reach the world. And then after all of that, I'll release it online and for everyone to see, hopefully on a streaming platform or something.
Cool. Well, that's exciting, and if any of the local Queens folk wanna go see it, RSVP online, I assume? Or is it
Yes.
sold out?
No, no, they can definitely RSVP. If they check out I have an Instagram specifically for the film. It's called Sound of Southside, and in that bio, you'll find the RSVP link for the film.
Cool. Well, Tyrell, this was amazing. I think that what you put out into the world was just simply authentic and beautiful, and I hope you're very, very proud of yourself and all that you've accomplished, and I I can't wait for the rest of the world to see it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. This has
Of
been great.
course. Well, maybe I'll see you at the premiere. I'm gonna get this out
Okay.
before then so that
Okay.
any Queens people that are here or listening can
Mhm.
go and see it.
Right.
And tell your wife she's amazing, beautiful
I will.
actress. And yeah, well, thanks for coming on and have an amazing day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.